Finally, The Rock has come back for another action movie! And what better action movie to review this year that is none other than the completely generic and disposable monster movie that is based off of a popular arcade game? I mean Rampage! For those of you who don't know what Rampage is, or what it's even about, Rampage is a very famous arcade game that came out in the year 1986 that everyone over the age of 30 have played when they were kids. It featured 3 monsters, a gorilla, a wolf, and I'm guessing an iguana, where they basically turn ginormous in size and they just start wreaking havoc across cities and facing against the military. It was a very simple premise, but nonetheless, it was still a fun game. Rampage the movie, however, is 75% fun, but we'll get to that later. In this adaptation of Rampage, it stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, a very experted primatologist named Davis Okoye. While working as a primatologist, he has this one friend that is actually an albino gorilla named George that accidentally touched a mystical-like gas or something that is known for basically making creatures into just mutated versions of themselves. Mostly because of a failed experiment that happened in outer space that's scattered across the United States all the way to where a crocodile is eating it, a wolf is touching it, and even George. And while The Rock sees this, he's kind of thinking to himself, what do I have to do? Is there anything that can possibly bring George back to normal? So he teams up with a former scientist played by Naomi Harris and a government official played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan just so they can save George's life and to prevent the other animals from destroying the city. So, based on the clues that I provided in my intro, does this movie break the video game curse specifically? Well, not in the slightest. But, is it entertaining to watch? Yeah, for some of it. Before we talk about those parts, let's talk about what I did like. First of all, I have to talk about some of the performances in the movie. A lot of the actors know what kind of movie they're in, but the true heart and soul of the entire movie is Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne Johnson is going to be another one of those movie stars that is going to rise up and become like possibly the next Arnold Schwarzenegger or the Sylvester Stallone, and it's mostly due to his charisma. Regardless of what kind of actor he is, I mean, he's not really gonna win an award anytime soon. Then again, Kobe Bryant won an Oscar, so there is hope. Because of the fact that he had experiences with the WWE, doing energetic promos, while his character doesn't entirely stand out, you can still kind of like him mostly because of his charisma, his bravado, his full-on confidence whenever he's displaying hilariously awesome one-liners. That's what really makes him a joy to watch. Even his relationship with George is fun to watch. You can obviously tell that they have been friends for a very long time, and some of the relationships and the camaraderie that they have with each other is actually pretty satisfying, and also pretty hilarious. But there is one guy who's having a blast in this movie, and that guy is the comedian himself, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. This guy, as a matter of fact, while he is playing quite of a cartoon, basically just talking in a Texas accent, but this guy 100% of the time knows what kind of movie he's in, and his performance is downright amusing. Another thing I would like to add is that since this is a movie about just basically 3 monsters just fighting each other, the movie would really have to sell you on its visual effects. And for the most part, some of the visual effects do really look great. The design and look of George looks completely detailed, and even some of the mutated creatures, like the design of the crocodile with its scales, its gills, and even its tusks that it's implemented onto the skin, I think is pretty much the best effect out of all of them, if I'm being completely honest. The one that kind of doesn't stand out from the rest would kind of have to be the wolf. Not to say it looks completely and utterly terrible, but I would have to say that at points, some of it looks good. At others, it does get a little fake, especially seeing how the design of the creature looks like something out of, I don't know, the newest Goosebumps movie, but it doesn't look all too bad. However, everything involving the helicopters or anything else in between, in terms of visual effects, it looks terrible. Just by looking at the motion of the helicopter or even the motion of a plane, it looks entirely fake. It honestly looks like something out of the Sharknado movies, preferably the first one. And I would have to say that some of the action scenes in this movie are pretty damn awesome. Seeing how I'm a huge fan of fight scenes where it basically involves monsters fighting monsters, I pretty much just got a huge kick out of it. Especially the last 25 to 30 minutes of the movie. But what's really preventing this movie from being the best video game movie ever made? First off, I would like to say that this movie has a whole lot of tonal inconsistencies. The movie really does kind of confuse its identity a little bit. Doesn't want to take itself seriously, does it not? In terms of the screenplay and the scenes being shown in the story, the movie doesn't really know where to go or what kind of movie it wants to be. In some moments you do have The Rock and George having their camaraderie with each other, you know, sharing banter back and forth. And when you're watching those scenes in the movie, you're like, okay, from the looks of it, it's gonna be going in a completely cheesy route. At other scenes, you have the giant wolf basically tearing apart all a bunch of soldiers to the point where Joe Manganiello see the remains of like the soldiers with like blood and guts just hanging out of them. And I'm like, okay, while that looks entirely badass, it doesn't really fit the tone. And there are also some times in the movie and scenes where it basically feels like the writers are saying, okay, what worked in this movie? What worked in that movie? Basically what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to basically lighthearted humor and very dark and grotesque violence, at points it doesn't usually mesh well together. The next flaw I have, oh my god. While you do have some characters that were entirely wasted, like Naomi Harris, she's just there. She's just usually there to follow the Rock around and just wondering, what do I do? What do I do? Some of the characters, like the zookeepers that basically appear at the beginning of the movie, are never mentioned or brought up again in the latter half. But the worst part about this entire movie are the villains. If you thought Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance was cartoonish, these villains make Boris and Natasha from the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie look like Bonnie and Clyde, specifically because of the fact that they're completely cartoonish and over the top with their performances. But it also kind of surprises me and disappoints me at the same exact time because one of the villains is being played by Malin Ackerman. You may know her as the Silk Spectre from the Watchmen movie. While it is kind of surprising that the Silk Spectre and the comedian are in the same movie together once again, the downside really is her role. While in some points in the movie she does tackle her character very efficiently, at other points, I thought she was terrible. And it really sucks because I really liked her from Watchmen and this movie isn't really doing her any favors. Plus, their entire plan makes no sense whatsoever. First of all, they want to make experiments on animals, creating them to be like giant mutations or something. Why they're doing it in the first place? The movie doesn't tell you, other than the fact that they need money to profit off of it. And they try to make everything completely hidden and behind the scenes, but at the same time, they're doing things that would make him get caught. Like, they had to get these animals all the way to Chicago to, like, this giant tower so that they won't get caught just so they can make money off of it. How stupid do you think I am? But like Billy Mays, there's more. While there is lots of dumb fun to be had in this movie, there are some moments in the movie that are just dumb. For example, there's a scene where somebody gets shot in the movie right in the chest, and they're laying right on the ground, and you're thinking to yourself, man, they could be dead. And the next thing you know, the same exact person gets out of this situation and goes like, yep, that bullet hole was nothing. Let's go kill some mutants. But I was thinking to myself, wait a minute. Didn't you get shot? Isn't that enough to kill you? But I was holding my suspension of disbelief and I was thinking, okay, maybe they'll explain it. And unfortunately enough, they never did. Overall, guys, Rampage is exactly what it is. At some points, you're going to be really entertained by this movie. At other points, you're gonna get really bored and kind of sick of it. While some of the performances are very cheesy but charming and some of the action scenes are badass and even the visual effects are impressive and detailed, the tone is all over the place, some of the visual effects look like crap, and the villains are just horrible. So overall, I would have to give Rampage a 2.5 out of 5. Alright guys, that is my review of Rampage. Comment below, let me know what you thought about the movie. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Also, if you want to see more reviews like this, be sure to subscribe for more. My name is Luke Nukem, and you, my friends, have been blown away. If you smell what the Rock is cooking.